My husband bought a house with our savings and put it in his mother's name. $200,000 gone, just like that, he said nonchalantly, scrolling through his phone like he just told me we were out of coffee. 5 years of overtime shifts, skipped, vacations and ramen noodle dinners. Poof. When I asked him why, he looked up with that condescending half smile I'd grown to hate and said, "You wouldn't appreciate it anyway. My mother deserves it more." I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just smiled and nodded, because unlike David, I knew something he didn't. Grandpa's inheritance wasn't just a boring old photo album like I'd told him. It was a historic mansion in Old Town and a trust fund that would make his jaw hit the floor. This morning, David's calling me nonstop because the property manager just sent him my forwarding address, and it's a house he's never seen before. Updated. Y'all, I'm blown away by the support on my last post. Some asked if I had proof the money was gone. Unfortunately, yes. Bank statements don't lie. David's still blowing up my phone with desperate voicemails. Would you have confronted him immediately or gone the stealth route like I did? Let me back up a bit. David and I met 6 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Chicago. He was charming, ambitious, and talked about building a life together with the kind of confidence that made you believe every word. I fell hard. We got married a year later. Small ceremony, big dreams. He worked as a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. I still am, an architect at a boutique firm specializing in historical renovations. We were the power couple our friends envied. 2 professionals, nice apartment in Lincoln Park, weekend trips to Michigan wineries. But what everyone admired most was our discipline. While our friends upgraded to luxury condos and leased BMWs, we lived below our means. Building our future, David would say, squeezing my hand across our IKEA dining table. The plan was straightforward: save $200,000 for a down payment on our dream home. I wanted a craftsman with a wraparound porch. He wanted something modern with clean lines. We'd figure it out when we hit our goal. Every bonus, every tax refund, every birthday check from relatives went straight into our joint savings account. I packed lunches instead of ordering DoorDash. David tracked our progress with a spreadsheet he updated every Sunday night. It was our ritual, Thai takeout, our one splurge, budget review, and planning which neighborhood we could afford. The only real friction in our marriage was about David's mother, Barbara. She was a presence. Twice weekly dinners at her condo in Evanston, daily phone calls, sometimes during our date nights. She had opinions about everything. My career, such a shame you couldn't get into commercial architecture. My cooking, a little bland, but you're trying. Even our decision to delay having children. My friends are already grandmothers twice over. When I brought up how uncomfortable her comments made me, David would shrug it off. That's just mom being mom, she means well. I should have paid more attention to the red flags. How David never contradicted her. How our vacations mysteriously aligned with her schedule. How she'd drop by our apartment with spare keys I never gave her. But love is a powerful filter, and I was seeing everything through rose-colored glasses. 2 months ago, we finally hit our goal, $203,467.80 in our joint savings account. I bought champagne that night. Actual Veuve Clicquot, not the Prosecco we usually got for celebrations. I was already calling real estate agents, scheduling viewings for the weekend. David seemed less enthusiastic, but I chalked it up to work. Stress. He'd been staying late at the office, coming home exhausted. Market volatility, he explained. I believed him. Then came that Wednesday. I was working from home, designing a renovation for a Victorian in Oak Park, when my phone pinged with a bank notification. Withdrawal confirmation, $200,000. My heart stopped. There had to be a mistake. I immediately called David, who sent me to voicemail 3 times. I called the bank next, hands shaking as I verified our account information. The transfer had been authorized that morning by David to a title company I didn't recognize. I sat at our kitchen island for hours, staring at the confirmation email, trying to make sense of it. Had our account been hacked? Was David surprising me? The knot in my stomach suggested a darker truth, but I pushed it away. When I heard his key in the door at 7:30 p.m., I was still sitting there, our account information pulled up on my laptop. "Hey," he said, loosening his tie, acting completely normal. "Sorry I missed your calls. Crazy day at work. Did you order anything for dinner?" I turned my laptop toward him. "Care to explain this?" He glanced at the screen, then walked to the fridge like I'd asked about the weather. "Oh, that, yeah, I closed on a property today." The casual way he said it made me wonder if I was losing my mind. "You... what? Our entire savings, David. Our house fund. You didn't think this warranted a conversation?" He grabbed a La Croix, cracked it open. "I've been talking to an investment advisor. This opportunity came up suddenly. A foreclosure in Wilmette. Mom's been wanting to downsize from the condo, and the numbers made sense. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. You bought your mother a house with our money without telling me? It's an investment, he said, his tone shifting to that financial expert voice he used when explaining the market to me. The neighborhood is up and coming. We'll make at least 20% when we eventually sell. But it's in your mother's name, I said, reading from the transfer details. Barbara Westbrook. That's when he dropped the line that changed everything. You wouldn't appreciate it anyway. My mother deserves it more. I stared at him, waiting for more explanation, for the part that would make this make sense. It never came. Instead, he launched into the practical reasons. His mother's financial advice over the years, her sacrifices raising him alone, how she'd been hinting about this particular neighborhood. The subtext was clear. His mother was family. I, somehow, was not. What about our house? I finally asked. The one we've been saving for? For us? He had the audacity to look annoyed. We can start saving again. You're being dramatic. It's just money. Just money. 5 years of our life together, of shared sacrifice and dreams, reduced to just money. Something inside me shifted in that moment. Not broke. Shifted. Like a gear finally clicking into place, allowing me to see the machinery of our relationship clearly for the first time. I could have screamed. I could have thrown his pretentious financial books at his head. I could have called Barbara and told her exactly what I thought of her and her precious son. Instead, I nodded slowly and said, I see. David looked relieved, probably thinking, I was accepting his decision. He had no idea I was accepting something else entirely, the truth about our marriage. That night, while he slept soundly beside me, how could he sleep? I made a call I'd been putting off for years, to my grandfather's attorney in Boston. See, there's something David didn't know about me, something I'd kept quiet because I wanted us to build our life together on equal footing, not on my family's legacy. My maternal grandfather was Bennett Caldwell of the Boston Caldwells. Old money, blue blood, summer homes in the vineyard, the whole Connecticut WASP fantasy. My mother had rebelled against that world, married a public school teacher, and moved to Chicago to start fresh. I'd grown up solidly middle class, visiting Grandpa Bennett during summers, but otherwise disconnected from that privilege. When Grandpa died 3 years ago, he left everything to me, his only grandchild. The bulk of his estate went into a trust that would mature on my 35th birthday, still a year away. But there was an acceleration clause. I could access the funds early for establishment of a primary residence. I'd kept this inheritance quiet, planning to surprise David when we found our dream home. I imagined us laughing about how we'd pinched pennies unnecessarily, then using the trust to build something spectacular together. So much for surprises. The attorney, Mr. Harrington, answered on the second ring despite the late hour. He remembered me immediately. Apparently, I was one of his more interesting clients, the granddaughter who hadn't touched her fortune. I'd like to trigger the acceleration clause, I told him, voice steady despite the tears sliding down my face. I'm purchasing a home. Of course, Miss Caldwell. The brownstone on Bradford Street as well? Or just the funds? I hesitated. The brownstone. Grandpa's historic townhouse in Chicago's Gold Coast neighborhood, just blocks from Lake Michigan. I'd visited once as a teenager but forgotten he owned property here. David and I had driven past that very street while house hunting, admiring the 19th century facades and joking that we'd need to win the lottery first. Both, I said, surprising myself. I'll take both. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. While David was in the shower, I forwarded our mail to my office address. When he left for work, kissing my forehead and reminding me we had dinner with his mother that night, I opened my laptop and began making arrangements. First, I called my boss, explaining I needed a personal leave of absence. Kate was understanding, more than understanding when I hinted that I might have a historical renovation project for the firm soon. Next, I contacted Mr. Harrington's Chicago associate, who arranged for a walkthrough of the Bradford Street property that afternoon. The brownstone was everything I'd imagined and more. 4 stories of 1880s craftsmanship, original millwork, herringbone. Hardwood floors and a rooftop terrace with a view of the lake. It needed work. The electrical was ancient, the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 70s, and the whole 3rd floor was uninhabitable due to water damage. But beneath the peeling wallpaper and creaky floors, I could see what it could become. Not just a home, but the foundation for something entirely new. By the time I returned to our apartment, a plan was forming. I packed essentials into 2 suitcases: clothes, my grandmother's pearl earrings, my architecture awards, and the external hard drive with all my designs. Everything else could be replaced. I wrote a brief note for David. Taking some time to think. Don't call. Then I called an Uber and didn't look back. For the next week, I stayed at the Palmer House downtown while Mr. Harrington's team processed the paperwork for the trust. I ignored David's increasingly frantic texts and calls. I changed my cell phone number but kept my work email active. I met with contractors about the brownstone renovation and drafted preliminary plans for what the space could become. My idea was ambitious. Convert the brownstone into a boutique hotel, showcasing architectural preservation, with the top floor serving as my private residence and the basement as a studio for my own architectural practice. The trust would cover renovation costs and provide operating capital until the business became self-sustaining. 7 days after I left our apartment, the property manager I'd hired to handle the hotel conversion accidentally sent an email to David, a simple administrative error. She'd gotten our last names confused and used an old email chain. But that one mistake blew everything wide open. The email detailed the renovation schedule for Ms. Caldwell's property on Bradford Street, complete with budget allocations and my new contact information. And now, 2 weeks later, David is calling me nonstop from the sidewalk outside my brownstone, alternating between demands for explanation and pleas for forgiveness. I watch him from the third-floor window, phone in one hand, coffee in the other. The contractor beside me raises an eyebrow. "Husband?" he asks, marking measurements on his clipboard. "Soon-to-be ex," I reply, taking another sip of my coffee. "Let's talk about those custom cabinets again." Updated. Things escalated faster than expected. Barbara showed up at the brownstone yesterday, demanding to speak with me. Security had to escort her out. Meanwhile, David discovered the house he bought for her has serious tax complications, something about historic district assessments. Karma? I've scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney for Monday. Should I give him a chance to explain, or is this beyond repair? I let David stew for exactly 24 hours before I finally answered one of his calls. Not because I owed him an explanation, but because I wanted to see his face when he realized what he'd thrown away. "Bradford Street? Really?" His voice crackled through the phone, equal parts angry and bewildered. "How long have you been hiding this from me?" "About as long as you've been planning to give our savings to your mother," I replied, keeping my tone even. Funny how secrets work. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Wicker Park, neutral territory. When I arrived, he was already there, hair uncombed, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt. He looked terrible. "Good. You look nice," he said as I sat down, eyeing my new Burberry trench coat. "I guess the trust fund is treating you well." I ignored the jab. "How's Barbara enjoying her new house?" His expression soured. "There are complications. The property taxes are higher than expected because of some historical district designation. Mom's on a fixed income, so I'm having to cover the difference." "That's unfortunate," I said, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. "Maybe you should have consulted a professional before making such a big investment decision. An architect, perhaps." He flinched. "I deserve that, but what I don't deserve is you hiding your family's money from me for our entire marriage. Were you ever going to tell me?" "Yes," I said simply. "When we found our house, the one we were saving for together, I was going to surprise you. The trust was supposed to be something we shared, David. A foundation for our future." "Then why not tell me from the beginning?" "Because I wanted us to build something together first. I didn't want to be your meal ticket." I stirred my untouched coffee. Clearly, I was right to be cautious. David's anger deflated, replaced by something that almost looked like shame. "I made a mistake. A huge one. But you have to understand. Mom's been struggling since her retirement. The condo association keeps raising fees, and her pension barely covers essentials. She's family. And what am I?" The question hung between us. He had no answer. We talked for another hour. About trust, about family loyalty, about the 5 years we'd spent building a life that had unraveled in a single day. He apologized repeatedly, each "I'm sorry" sounding hollower than the last. When he finally suggested couples counseling, I surprised myself by not immediately refusing. "I'll think about it," I said, standing to leave. "But first, I need time. And space." "And the brownstone?" he asked. "Is that your space now?" "It's going to be a boutique hotel," I said, watching his eyes widen. "With my architectural studio on site. The Hamilton House, named after my mother's family." "You're starting a business? Just like that?" I smiled for the first time during our conversation. "I've been designing other people's dreams for years, David. It's time I built my own." As I turned to leave, he grabbed my wrist. Not roughly, but desperately. "What about us? What about our dreams?" I gently removed his hand. "Our dreams cost exactly $200,000, apparently. And you decided they weren't worth it." The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. I threw myself into the brownstone renovation, working alongside contractors from dawn until dusk. Kate gave me an official leave from the firm, but contracted me as a consultant for the Hamilton House project, a gesture of support that brought me to tears when she proposed it. The brownstone transformation was cathartic, tearing down walls that no longer served, preserving what was beautiful and historic, building something completely new in the spaces in between. A metaphor so obvious it would be laughable if it weren't so true. David continued reaching out. Texts, emails, even handwritten letters delivered to the construction site. Some days I read them, most days I didn't. His mother was another story. Entirely. Barbara showed up unannounced 3 times, demanding to speak with me, accusing me of destroying her son's life and flaunting my secret wealth. The 3rd time I had security escort her out. The irony wasn't lost on me when David called a week later, voice tight with stress, to inform me that Barbara would have to sell her new house. The property taxes and maintenance costs were unsustainable. On her fixed income, and with our joint accounts emptied and his own finances stretched thin, he couldn't keep supporting her. "I thought you had it all figured out," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "I was wrong," he admitted, "about a lot of things." 2 months after I left our apartment, the first floor of the Hamilton house was complete, a stunning showcase of restored Victorian elegance with modern touches that respected the original architecture. The Chicago Tribune ran a feature on the project, highlighting my vision for architectural tourism and historical preservation. Reservations started coming in for our projected opening, still 3 months away. I was standing in what would become the hotel's library discussing bookshelf installation with the carpenter when David appeared in the doorway. He looked different, thinner, humbler, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. "I filed the divorce papers," he said without preamble. "You'll be receiving them tomorrow." I dismissed the carpenter with a nod. "Thank you for not dragging it out. I'm not contesting anything. The apartment, the car, it's all yours if you want it. I'm moving back to Cincinnati. Mom's going to stay with my sister for a while until we figure things out." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. "You don't have to leave Chicago." He shrugged. "Nothing for me here anymore." We stood in silence. 5 years of shared history and broken trust stretching between us like police tape around a crime scene. Finally, I said what I'd been rehearsing for weeks. "I've been thinking about your counseling suggestion." His head snapped up, hope flickering briefly in his eyes. "Not for reconciliation," I clarified quickly, "but for closure. We built a life together, David. We owe it to ourselves to understand why it fell apart." He nodded slowly. "I'd like that. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe the counseling will give us both the answers we need. Maybe the Hamilton house will become the success I envision. Maybe David will find whatever he's looking for back in Cincinnati. What I do know is this: I'm no longer the woman who silently accepted being second place in her own marriage. The money didn't change me. His betrayal did. And while I never wanted this particular path, I'm finally building something that's truly mine." As for David and Barbara, they're learning a hard lesson about appreciation. Some things, once their true value is revealed, can never be bought back. Updated. 6 months later, and the Hamilton house just received its first 5-star review. David and I completed our counseling sessions last month. We're not getting back together, but I found peace with how things ended. Barbara still won't speak to me, but honestly, that feels like a win. Have you ever discovered your own strength only after someone underestimated you?